Controlling anger. How a rich lady lost her reputation. This is an ancient story which goes back to the days of the Buddha. An aristocratic rich widow, well known in high society for her apparent benevolence, had a housemaid who was faithful and diligent. One day, out of curiosity, the maid decided to test her mistress to find out whether she was really good by nature, or if it was merely a pretense put on for the sake of appearance in her fortunate high society surroundings. The following morning, the maid got up from her bed quite late at around midday, and the mistress chided her for being late. The following day, too, the maid repeated her late rising. The mistress, in rage, abused the maid and struck her with a stick, thus hurting her. News of this incident spread around the neighborhood, and the rich widow lost not only her reputation, but also a faithful servant. Similarly, in this modern society, people are kind and modest when their surrounding conditions are good and satisfactory. When conditions change and become unfavorable, they show their true nature and become irritable and angry. Remember the saying, when others are good, we can also be good. When others are evil, it is easy for us to become evil. Anger is an ugly and destructive emotion. All human beings are subject to anger in one form or another in their daily lives. It is a negative emotion which is dormant within us, waiting to flare up and take control over our lives when the occasion arises. Anger can be likened to a flash of light which blinds us temporarily and causes us to act unreasonably. Uncontrolled anger can cause us a great deal of harm, both physically and emotionally. Like any other human emotion, anger can be brought under control. Certain creatures by nature are unable to see during daytime, while some others are blind at night. A human being driven to great heights of hatred and bitterness is blind to anything in the true sense, either by day or by night. There is a saying, an angry person opens the mouth and closes the eyes like a crocodile. It is said that an angry person transfers the effects of anger when he or she regains reasoning. Just as money stored in the bank will reap a dividend, so will the anger stored in the mind reap the returns of bitterness. Whom or what do we fight with when we are angry? We fight with ourselves and become, as it were, our worst enemy. We must try to eradicate this dangerous enemy latent in our minds with a proper understanding of the situation. Anger grows stronger when fueled by emotion, especially when craving is behind that emotion. At that moment of intense anger, a person ceases to be human. He or she becomes a dangerous animal capable of destroying not only others, but also him or herself. Anger can cost a person's reputation, job, friends, loved ones, peace of mind, health, and even one's very own self. The Buddha spoke about the wretchedness of anger and said that when people are angry, 7 things befall them that will help the cause of enemies and make them rejoice. What are the 7? They will be ugly despite being well-groomed and well-dressed. They will lie in pain, even if they sleep on a soft and comfortable couch. They will do things which give rise to harm and suffering by mistaking bad for good and good for bad, by being reckless and not listening to reason. They will lose their hard-earned wealth and even run into trouble with the law. They will lose reputation and fame, which have been acquired by diligence. Friends, relatives, and kin will avoid them. After death, rebirth will take place in an unfavorable state of existence, since a person who is controlled by anger performs unwholesome actions through body, speech, and mind, which bring unfavorable results. These are misfortunes, which one's enemy would like to wish for. But these are the very misfortunes that befall a person who is overcome by anger. So an angry person is his or her own worst enemy. A good way to control anger is to act as if the undesirable thoughts do not exist in our mind. By using our willpower, we focus our mind on something wholesome and thus subdue negative emotions. It is not easy to react peacefully to someone who insults us. Although the physical body is not harmed, The ego feels humiliated, thereby making a person feel like hitting back. It is not so easy to reciprocate insults with courtesy and respect. But the test of character is how we deal with trying situations that confront us in our daily lives. It seems, even from our childhood, that we like to take revenge for our own satisfaction. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In one who holds such thoughts, hatred will not cease. Of the Buddha. Darkness cannot be dispelled by darkness, but by brightness. In the same way, hatred cannot be overcome by hatred, but by loving kindness. The Buddha said, "Some persons are like letters carved on rock. They easily give way to anger and retain their angry thoughts for a long time. Some are like letters written in sand. They give way to anger also, but the angry thoughts quickly pass away. Some are like letters written in water. They do not retain their passing thoughts. But the perfect ones are like letters written in the air. They let abuse and uncomfortable gossip pass by unnoticed. Their minds are always pure and undisturbed." Even if we feel angry at injustice done to others, we should contain our anger because we are not in a position to arrive at a correct course of action in a disturbed state of mind. When we are angry, we must be aware of our own anger. Observe the anger as a mental state without directing it to the object that causes the anger. We must train ourselves to observe and analyze our emotions when we are angry. By constantly practicing self-analysis of our moods, we will gain greater confidence in being able to control ourselves and will not act foolishly or irrationally. The Buddha's advice is, "Good is restraint in deed. Good is restraint in speech. Good is restraint in mind. Good is restraint in everything. The noble man who practices restraint in all points is freed from sorrow." Not all people adopt the same strategy to control their anger. One effective way is to employ the time delay method. Thomas Jefferson summed up this approach when he said, "When angry, count to 10 before you speak. If very angry, count to 100.
A recipe to develop better control of our temper is to repeat these ideas mentally several times a day to ourselves. I can control my anger. I can subdue irritability. I will keep cool and be unruffled. I will be unmoved by anger as a rock. I am courageous and full of hope. By repeating these lines mindfully, we can strengthen our minds to gain confidence and mental calmness. When faced with the thoughtless actions of people, we can also keep in mind what the Buddha taught. If people foolishly do me wrong, I will return to them the protection of my infinite love. The more evil comes from them, the better shall go from me. The fragrance of goodness always comes to me, and they gain only a bad reputation. A wicked person who reproaches a virtuous one is like someone who looks up and spits at heaven. The spittle soils not the heaven, but comes back and defiles the defiler. A slanderer is like one who flings dust at another when the wind is contrary. The dust falls on he who threw it. The virtuous person cannot be hurt. The misery comes back to the slanderer. Of course, to control anger, we must be prepared. To do this, we must refer to the 4 great efforts which we discussed earlier, namely, to prevent negative thoughts from arising, to eradicate those already arisen, to foster positive thoughts, and to maintain them. This calls for constant mindfulness, so that we are never caught unawares when anger strikes, but are trained to respond positively instantaneously. A wild boar who challenged a lion, wise people never challenge foolish ones. A wild boar once decided to become the king of the jungle. So he got up from the dung heap where he was resting and went to the lion, the king of beasts, and challenged him to a fight. Of course, the lion just turned his nose at the smelly creature, ignoring him, and walked away without even bothering to reply. This story illustrates that when wise beings are challenged by those who have a low mentality, the noble ones should not waste their time on them. A Brahmin once hurled abuse at the Buddha, who calmly let him go on until he was completely exhausted. Then the Buddha asked the abusive man, "If you give a gift to someone and he does not accept it, to whom would it belong?" The startled Brahmin replied, "Why, to me, of course." The Buddha said, "In the same way, since I do not accept your abuse, it must naturally return to you." This should be our reaction too, the monk who meditated on the singing of a girl. There is another story of a monk who was trying to meditate, but his effort was constantly thwarted by the loud singing of a girl who lived nearby. Instead of getting angry, the monk decided to use singing as the object of the meditation. So he concentrated on the sound, without paying attention to the lyrics, so that he would not be distracted. Similarly, when someone speaks abusively, one tactic would be to hear the sound, but not attach meaning to the words. Try it. It's difficult, but it works. The Buddha has also given some advice for controlling anger. This advice, if followed, grows in effectiveness the more it is practiced. By recollecting the advice of the Buddha, who spoke about the danger of anger and problems created by holding these unwholesome thoughts. By recalling some of the good qualities of the hated person. When you disregard bad characteristics as a human weakness and start thinking of positive qualities and the good things the person had performed, then the anger could soften and give way to loving kindness. By remembering the ownership of karma. All beings are the owners and heirs of their respective karma, and they will inherit the fruits of their good or bad actions. By understanding this law, you will be less inclined to be angry with another. Instead of being angry, you develop compassion for the other person who will have to face the results of bad actions. By cultivating thoughts of loving kindness to all beings. Great blessing comes to those who develop their minds through the practice of boundless love and compassion to all. By not letting your mind be polluted by evil thoughts towards the person who has wronged or hurt you. The anger you hold in your mind does you more damage than to other person. Therefore, cultivate a life of joy and love, even while living among the hateful. The way to heaven. Tell the truth, do not get angry. Contribute something for the well-being of others. This is the way to be with devas in heaven. The Buddha.